Come on in, come on in, come on in. This is great. All these people joining me on the Zoom tonight. I'm so happy. Love it when I'm not just talking to myself. I mean, the live streaming in the group is cool, but it's not the same as having people in the Zoom meeting. Let's see, Monday Masterclass. All right, we are going live in the group. Got more joining, yay. It's a party tonight, love it. Hello to those watching the replay. If you don't already know me, my name is Nat, Coach Nat, the Keto Bikini Pro, and it's time for another Monday Night Masterclass. Oh, Mary, I see the guns. I see the guns. It's happening already. Mary's in the shred. She got her workout done today. She is embracing new things. We're going to talk a lot about that tonight. Getting uncomfortable, leaving behind the comfortable and then the familiar. That's what this whole struggle to stay on track is really all about. At the end of the day. So y'all know I'm all about the grace and the grind, and there's going to be a lot of grace and grind going on in this conversation tonight. Oh, let me pull up the chat. I already got the chat popping off. I just love these women. I've got this new blood in the group, and y'all are just showing up and showing out for each other and chatting, and it's so much fun. Juliana loves my Google shirt. Oh yeah, this is older than Google, stronger than Wi-Fi, baby. To all the Xennials and Gen Xers and everybody before Google. I'm an Xennial, I was right on the line. I have some millennial traits. I have some Gen X traits. I like to call it the best of both worlds. Just like my ethnicity, Greek and Italian. Can't beat it. I got all my Northeastern ladies up here on here tonight. I love it. Y'all know what's up. Okay, let me get in the group and make sure the chat is going. We're going deep tonight, y'all. We're getting into what I really like to get into, which is all the mental stuff. Okay, we got comments in the group still coming in. Oh, that little group chat in the messenger before the event tonight was cute. Was that you, Juliana, showing your bug on your basil extra protein? That's fun. I love it. All right, let's see. Let's get into the group here. Okay, where's the live video? Where are we? There it is. Yay. Okay, cool. We are live in the group. If y'all are on with us live streaming in the Facebook group, you can comment in the comments below the video. So drop me a comment, let me know if you're there. So I know that's working. All right. Somebody shared, a couple of y'all shared that my video or audio, I think the audio was a little choppy last time. And I think it might be because I click off to look at my notes. So this time, I think I'm going to do this differently. Let's do this. Yay, Crystal's on, thank you. All right, now I can see the Facebook comments and the Zoom comments. Awesome. Yay, Juliana, this is much better today. Cool. I really think it's because whenever I click off to look at my notes, it like it's not focused on the Zoom. So we're going to keep this focused so I can see the comments from both places. And I'm going to use notes on my phone tonight. Gotta love modern technology. All right, so this one tonight is for my ladies struggling with this on again, off again, on the wagon, off the wagon, fell off track. We always use all those terms, right? Off track, on track, gotta get back on track. And that looks really different at different times in the journey. I've, chatting with some people today, I realized, this one term can have a lot of different connotations depending on who's hearing it. When we say falling off track, two different people might have two completely different definitions of what that means. So whatever I say tonight, I've stolen this amazing phrase from one of my clients, Tori, who once said, because she does business coaching, by the way, shout out, plug to her. Don't know if this will be for you or not. Eat the fish and spit out the bones. So I've now used that in another talk. I'm using it again. I'm going to use it all the time. Tonight, if it's for you, it's for you. If it's not, spit out the bones. No problem, okay? Hopefully I'll cover the gamut of people coming from different places. But, all right. Whatever and however you define being off track, the number one thing everybody always says is the one thing they know they need to work on, and it's the consistency. Sometimes, and I even got some answers to the question in the group today about struggling, is that they don't struggle with the diet, struggle with the workouts, being consistent with their fitness. So it may not even be the diet. So apply this to whatever it might mean for you, right? When we want to do something and we have a goal and we've set an intention, and it can be in any area of life, and then we don't follow through with what we said we were going to do, that doesn't feel good. And that's essentially what we're talking about here, this on again, off again. I set this intention, I wanted to do this thing, and I'm not showing up for myself, and I don't like the way that feels. That's really what we're talking about when it comes to brass tacks. So I'm just going to hit every different thing, what's going on and what we can do about it, whatever the off track thing is. First and foremost, we're diving right into it tonight. Y'all have heard this a million times, and I kind of hate it because it's becoming cliche, but it is anything but cliche. Revisit your why. Everybody says it, right? You got to go back to your why, go back to your why. And unfortunately, just like the term, I want to get my goals. I'm working toward my goals. I have goals. The term goals and the term why end up meaning nothing because we use that as an umbrella term all the time. So I want to give you some practical advice here. When we say go back to your why, we mean really, go back to your why. Write it down. If you didn't write it down before, sit down and ask yourself. It's nothing woo-woo. It's a real question. Why am I doing this? Sometimes I've had clients or been in groups where I've heard some of the things being shared, and that's been a real question I had to them. Do you even want to do keto? Why did you choose keto? And of course, I say that because I always say, and it's true, by the way, I can get you results on any diet. So why did you choose this one? Because I'm not in the business of convincing anyone to be keto. That's not my role in this community. There are people who do that very well, and I let them do that. Once the ladies have bought in, believe in it, want to do this, but they're struggling. They're either struggling because they don't know if what they're doing is really right to get them what they want to get out of it. So it's like, what do I need to be doing to actually change my body? Or I'm just having a hard time and I need some support, guidance. That's when they come to me. They're not coming to me for me to convince them to do keto. If I have to convince you, I'm not taking you on as a client. So everybody has a reason why they're doing it. And it may be keto for you, it may be low carb, it may be paleo, it may be carnivore. We're all different brands of keto, right? I asked this question in my group today, and I think I got more answers to that question than I've ever gotten to any question before. And that's saying a lot, because the question right before was all my ladies raising their hands and sharing how old they are and how they feel. And that was one of the best posts I've ever seen either, because it was just shouting from the rooftops that we can be strong and healthy at any age. But this came right after that, and it was just even more. I mean, I was reading through each one, and eventually I was like, oh my gosh, if I keep reading these, I'm going to be late for my own masterclass. There's so much there. So for anybody right now who's struggling, maybe to even connect to your own why, you kind of lost sight of it over time. And what some of us are in is we've been doing this for a long time, and the new car smell wears off, and we're kind of like at the holiday gathering or whatever, and that thing looks good. And the next thing we know, we're waking up New Year's Day and it's been a month off track. And it was never really anything front of mind to us. We weren't really struggling with it. It was just a slow slide. It just kind of happened, right? So that could be you, that you've been doing this for a while and just kind of got a little carb creep, as they call it, right? Things started sneaking in. If that's the case, this is a great thing to do. And even if you are every single day struggling, fantastic. Get into the group and read through those answers, because it might jog your memory of what it really was for you at the beginning and how that's changed over time, because everybody shared, right? I started this, maybe it was for the weight loss for some people. For other people, it was for serious health conditions. You know, for others, it was a lot more chill than that. It was like somebody told them about it. They had this one thing, but it wasn't that serious, but they wanted to see if it might help. And then they felt so much better on this lifestyle that they just couldn't believe it. And that was part of my story. I just didn't even know I could feel that good in my body. I never had my whole life. So reading those stories, even if you're not thinking so much about your own why, but to see the stories from others. And here's another kind of practical tip I'll just throw in right here. Going to events in person or virtually where you can connect with other people in this community and hear the stories. Y'all, it gets me every time. I was just in New Jersey a couple days ago at Dr. Lisa Wiedemann's meetup, and hearing the stories is everything. It's so powerful. It connects me back to why I love this lifestyle and why I'll never leave it. And I think that that's a major thread for all of us that keeps us going, to see that community. And it reminds us we're not alone in this. And that is so, so powerful, because for most of us, we're alone doing it in our own physical space, right? Now there's going to be less and less of that, because antithetic is changing the game. And we're trying to create communities everywhere where people are connecting and in their local area, finding friends who are doing it. Yes, Christina, community is so important to me. Deb said the energy is unbelievable. Yes, that is I remember calling it the keto high when I first discovered it. And these are things like you forget along the way as well when you've been doing it for a long time. I remember yesterday, so funny story, I had an old blog that just finally I decided to let go of the domain name and move on. It was an old blog I barely ever wrote on. And I had like 3 or 4 posts on the thing. And just yesterday, I got the notification that it's expiring. So I went over there and I read an old blog post. It was about my very first bikini competition, my first prep. And I was only, gosh, I had to have been only maybe the first week or 2 in, because I was talking about it early on about how I hadn't done all this stuff yet. But that's how I discovered keto. I had just gone keto. And I was talking about the big difference between trying to do a comp prep on the other way, the high carb, low fat way, and all the reasons I didn't like it, all the reasons I hated it, and all the reasons why this was so much better. And it was so cool to go back and read my own words when I was really excited about keto in the beginning. So I'm going to encourage, now we got to go a little woo woo. And I'm going to encourage you, wherever you are in your journey, if you're just starting out or if you're an old vet, write things down, journal. Set aside some time in your week to journal. And it could be on a blog. Jennifer Butler just recently shared about her blog. She shares some really powerful stuff there, A Journey by Jennifer. Or it can be on your computer. It can be old school. I love journals. I have so many journals that are sitting around that I've finished, and I just still have like in a whole library of old journals. So writing down something about writing with a pen and paper that's different than writing electronically, but it does something therapeutic for you just to get it out on the page. It's getting out of your head and onto the page, and it allows you to process it so much better. So as a lot of the things I'm talking about tonight are going to be around this mental and emotional processing, and the journaling piece, so many people do not force themselves to do this. I did it intermittently growing up, and it wasn't until I was in a really dark place with binge eating when I decided to work with a coach and went through a group program, and journaling daily was a requirement. And so for the first time ever, I made myself do it every day. I would go to my lunch break. I used to work outside the house, and I would take my lunch break and I would take my journal, and I would do it every day. And I got more out of that 8 weeks than I ever had in my life prior. So if you don't already have a journaling practice, that is one of my number one tips for you tonight. And the first thing you should journal is, why is this important to me? Bronson and I both have an exercise we really love. It is called the 7 levels deep. It's basically going deep on your why, not wide, because normally when we ask people why they're doing this, they have 10 different reasons. Well, I want to lose weight, and I want to improve my psoriasis, and I want this health marker and that thing, and for my kids, and for this and for that, right? And they just list it all out, but that's all a lot of, I hate to call it shallow, but it's all the first thing you think of. So it's the first level of why. You can start there, and this is somebody asked the question, how do you start? Yeah, you could start there by writing down all of the myriad of reasons why you're doing this. And then take a step back and look at that list, and which one, and maybe you need to start by circling 5 of them that stand out to you the most. And then reflect, spend a little time reflecting on those top 5 and narrow it down to the top 3. And then pick the number one reason why out of all the reasons. And that's the one you're going to work on for your 7 levels. So you're going to write that down as number 1. My why. The next question you ask yourself is, why is that important to me? If weight loss was your number 1, why do I want to lose weight? And you answer that question and put that in number 2. And for that, number 2, you now ask, why is that important to me? This is where it usually gets really tough around 4. And that's when you have to take a pause. Maybe you have to put it down and pick it back up the next day. Because there's going to be some blocks. That's what we call resistance. You don't want to go there to the deeper stuff, the stuff that hurts. Because it's where it's probably going to start hurting. There's going to be some emotion there. So give yourself all the time you need for this. Come back to it, put it aside, come back to it as many times as you need to. But you're drilling down for that number 7. That's going to be the one. Maybe 5 and 6 might do it too. But 7's going to be the one that tugs at the heartstrings. You can't even read it off the page out loud without eliciting emotion. We have some ambulance or something going on around here. So that one, see, that was like the alert, right? The alert is number 7. That's the one that when we say go back to your why, that's the one to go back to. Because when you feel that emotion again, it is really hard to ignore it. And when we are going off track, we are trying to ignore. So it has to be powerful enough that you're not going to ignore that one. I think this is why we see so many of the success stories in the low carb community, because of a really big pain at the beginning. A doctor telling you only had X amount of time left to live. Or if you keep going down this road, you're not going to see your kids grow up. Things of that nature that blow the blinders off and hit you where it hurts and make you do something about it. So the second step in all of this would be to face the pain. This is something I push clients to do at the beginning, because they're always excited when they sign up with me and they're so motivated and they just know they're going to crush it. So that's when I want them to look at the pain now, because it's coming. And when things get hard, that's when we want to bail, because we don't want to look at the pain. We don't want to look at the thing that really hurts about where we are right now. It may be a physical, there's probably a lot of physical pain that goes with that, but it's usually more of an emotional pain. This is why I have a couple of exercises I do with clients called the big why and the big why not. I stole these from Glenn Livingston, PhD, who wrote Never Binge Again. Highly recommend that. He has books and workbooks, and the main book is free on his website. I went through the course, but you don't have to go through the course. He puts a lot of it, all of it pretty much in the workbooks. So I had to use those with clients because they were just too powerful. But it's essentially a journaling exercise that asks you to look at every area of your life in a year from now. And the big why is, if I do everything that I'm committing to doing, what is that vision of where I'll be in a year from now? Where do I want to be? And every time I speak, I say, that's harder to find for most people than where they are now and where they don't want to be. So I usually encourage, let's start with the big why not, which is if I don't do everything that I said I was going to do, where will I be in a year? And usually it means we're going in the wrong direction and we end up doing more of the same of what we've been doing that got us to a place we didn't want to be. And that hurts to look at. So we've got to do that first. And once we are clear on the pain, the vision becomes even more clear. If I don't want to live in chronic pain, how would I describe that on the other side? Freedom of movement, independent living, right? We want to find the affirmative on the other side of that. And now we have 2 visions. I always like to say those little decisions every day can feel like nothing if we're not thinking about where they're sending us. If it's just a 5 grams of carbs today from this, whatever the thing is, it's just a bite, right? It's only 5 grams. That's only 20 calories. No big deal, right? But what trajectory is it putting us on? Is it going toward the future you want? Or is it sending you down the path of pain? When you start seeing everything as this decision, it doesn't seem so small anymore. It's a step in one direction or the other. It's hitting hard, ain't it? Yep. We don't play around here. So revisit the why, confront the pain, and create the vision of where you do want to be. All right, now here's where really everything comes together. I always like to talk about trade-offs. Everything is a trade-off. When we're trying to go in a direction, keto, carnivore, low carb, we're trying to change our lifestyle. Maybe it's fitness. We've never got our butts off the couch and now we're trying to do something. Boy, is that uncomfortable. And maybe we don't want to do it. We're going to get into that in a minute. Being real with yourself about maybe you don't want to do this. Maybe you're doing this because you believe this is the only option for you. And boy, did I hear a lot of that in the answers today in the group. I started keto because nothing else worked. I started this because I tried it all. And those things failed me. If I looked at a carb, I gained weight. This was the only thing I could do. And I saw it in another group today about, I have come to the realization that I have to do this for the rest of my life. So I want to talk about, for one, the trade-offs. You're trading something comfortable for something scary and uncomfortable that's going to give you something better. You don't want to give up that thing because it's so, it's just near and dear to us. That Netflix on the couch with the snacks. Oh, it's so comfortable. But we have to have something to combat that. If all we're ever doing is looking at the diet as the enemy, it's taking my life away from me. I can't do anything I enjoy anymore. There's no joy without this food. Oh, the times I've seen that, right? It is an association you have. And it's not easy to change. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's one of the hardest parts of this. But you can change the association you have with these things, but it's going to take work. So let's first talk about language, because language is everything. The words that we use are so powerful, and it doesn't have to be said out loud. The most powerful words we're hearing all day long are between our ears. That statement I saw in that group, I have to do this for the rest of my life. That feels like a prison. That wouldn't make me want to do it. I'm keto because I have to be. So this concept of it's the only thing that's going to work for me, I'm doomed to have to do this. That has such a heavy negative connotation to it. Very unlikely you're going to stick with it when you think that way about it. What about I choose to do this? I am choosing to do this because, and then finish the sentence. This whole I have to, I can't, that language is defeating. And we're never finishing that sentence. We let that be the end of the sentence. When we say, I'm choosing this, why? There's an opportunity to revisit your why every time you make that statement. Let's not call it a goal. Let's not call it, what did I say? My why. What is your why? Every time you say my why, finish the sentence and explain what your why is. Remind yourself what it is. Yes, Mary, I get to do this. That's the other thing I wrote down. I get to do this for the rest of my life because I love it and I love this. It is a way of living from pain. That's what I'm talking about. Because here's the thing. Some of you don't love it. And your brain is going to be saying bullshit, bullshit, bullshit when you say that. And that's okay to acknowledge. You don't need to do the affirmations that you don't believe yet. I am thin, I am beautiful, people love me, right? It doesn't have to be cheesy like that. It doesn't have to be you're saying things you don't believe. I remember early on in my journey, because it was for health for me as well. And I remember many times being upset that I didn't just get to eat like everybody else. It hurt. I didn't like it. I didn't want to give up everything that I was used to and what was familiar to me. And I had this, it's not fair feeling. And back then there weren't so many groups out there. So I remember thinking, God, I wish I could find a group that was dealing with gut issues and they're only doing this because they hate being in pain, but they don't really want to do this. Now, the cool thing is you have groups for every different segment of this community that's dealing with every ailment you could think of. You could probably find a group that's going through that, which is so amazing. And I highly encourage you to do it because you don't have to suffer alone. I know there's a lot in the gluten-free community, the celiac community, who really, really struggled with this, and the autoimmune, right? Especially for my people out there having to do lion diet because it's the only thing, or only animal hearts, right? Like it just gets more and more and more and more constricted in what you can do. And that is hard. And so part of it, another step, is acknowledging that it's hard. Fully allowing your feelings, whatever they are, and validating them. I hate this right now. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's journal about that. How does it make you feel? If you're angry, write it out. If it makes you sad because you don't feel like you have friends anymore because they don't understand you, get it out. People don't want to hang out with you anymore. They think you're too good for them. Oh, that's going to happen when you start getting results, or if you've already had results, you'll have some jealousy. So there's going to be a long emotional journey with this. And the higher you want to climb, it's going to be another level you have to break through, and more emotions are going to come with that. And the reason why, honestly, a lot of us struggle with the food situation is because we turn to food to soothe our emotions. But food doesn't solve the problem. It's just procrastination and avoidance. The problem's still going to be there, just as strong, and probably worse, because now you've added more problems on top of it from whatever foods you decided to indulge in. And now you've got more problems. So if you're doing this for weight loss and nothing else worked, and you feel like you're stuck in this and this is your only option, ask yourself, how do I feel about that? No judgment, just curiosity. And name the feelings. If you're doing it for a health reason, how do you feel about that? Acknowledge that it is hard and stop berating yourself for the failings. That is never going to motivate anybody to change. You wouldn't do that to someone else. You wouldn't want to berate someone who is trying and having a hard time. So please stop doing that to yourself. It's only going to make you want to hide more and probably dive into some more food, because all those emotions are now being pushed aside. So in your acknowledgement of this being hard, guess what else you get to do? You get to acknowledge the fact that you're doing something hard, and that makes you feel proud. Hey, this is hard, but look at me. Look what I've been able to do. Acknowledge and celebrate yourself for every single win. Start writing them down. I said last time, I think, or one of these times, that I was going to post in the group my journal. I have a digital download journal. It's called the Level Up Journal, and it's got the prompts in it that I use with my private clients in our one-on-ones weekly, but it also has daily prompts. So you can use this, do your own journaling, and celebrate your wins. Because the first question I ask my clients every single week, what were your wins this week? We cannot acknowledge and dive right into our challenges until we first at least put one win down on paper. And sometimes, especially at the beginning, when they are having a hard time, I point out the wins for them because they can't see them. You checked in this week. That's a win. You weren't doing that before, right? You took the progress photos even though you felt like you couldn't even look at them afterwards. I know a lot of ladies in the shred are feeling that way right now. Oh, it's scary to take those first pictures. I had a couple ladies in the shred who really stepped up. I'm not going to call them out, but they're both on the call right now. And I didn't expect it. I didn't ask it. I didn't ask for any of those photos to be shared in the group. They only had to do it with me, but they opened the door, and I think, and shared not just pictures, but video. Video, y'all. Video hides nothing with the other ladies. And I think it just really opened up and showed everyone that it was a safe container. So thank you. You know, you are. Thank you so much. And she says it was liberating. Yeah, I agree. I agree. It brought me to tears. Whew. So, all right. Celebrate your wins. Acknowledge it's hard. Every little win you can find. And then the big thing, you're going to have to change your relationship with that food. I always love to use the analogy of the abusive husband, the abusive boyfriend, the abusive relationship. And drugs is another really good example. But the relationship is so powerful because you have all this love bombing going on and you think it loves you, right? This is what the food is doing to you. It's sending all these signals, making you think you're in love, making you think it loves you so much. And then it hits you again and again. It kicks you when you're down. But when you're trying to give it up and get away from the abuser and leave, something keeps pulling you back because you're just thinking about the good times. You're thinking about all the happy memories, how good it tastes. Really, that's really all it is, right? It's probably the only good thing that we remember about those foods. They tasted good. And for those of us who've been doing this for a long time, they probably wouldn't even taste that good to us now. Now that we've learned to appreciate the taste of real food. We notice how fake they taste and how overly sweet they taste. Thanks for being on, Christine. Say hi to Kelly Hogan for us. Okay, so changing the relationship is changing the association, which is the hardest part that I spoke about earlier, because 10 times out of 10, when a client is struggling with this, it is because the association of that food is still happy memories, happy things, good things. They're looking at the diet or the diet foods as unpleasurable, unenjoyable, doesn't ring all those bells. And all that food is the forbidden fruit, for one, and for two, so that, you know what that does when you tell a kid not to do something. All they want to do is go have that thing. So we'll talk in a minute about the language of can and can't again. But that's why the language is so important, and acknowledging that it's a choice, because the can and can't is going to make you want it even more. But the associating, how many times do we see it called a treat? Right? It's either called a cheat or a treat, but a lot of the time we're seeing it treat because everybody's saying, oh, you shouldn't use the word cheat. Bullshit. You're cheating on your spouse being your lifestyle, your spouse being your health. Your spouse is your why, right? So the why you're doing this, think of that as your relationship, your loyal relationship. And think of those foods, which really they're not foods. We need to start calling them garbage. Usually I like to call them garbage or junk when I'm talking to clients, because we have to change the association, and that starts with the words that we use. Stop calling it a treat. Stop calling it, what else do we call it? Usually treat, I think, is the main one. Always making it sound like this is better than the real foods. We have to start seeing the real foods as the treat and that stuff as junk, drug. My good friend Mary Roberts has a wonderful podcast called Food Freedom with Coach Mary. Amazing for those of you struggling, because she talks about it as a drug and it gets into your head and you just cannot. Woo! She hits hard. She does not pull any punches, and I love it. Oh yes, Maria, perfect one. Oh, I was good today. I deserve this. Right, what you're saying is, I deserve pain. I deserve poor health. I deserve poison. So when we start saying those things instead, what am I actually, finish the sentence again, right? What are you deserving? Because the brain doesn't want to offer that information. And let's remember too, our brain is trying to keep us safe. Our brain is not built to make us thrive, because it doesn't know that losing body fat and building muscle and doing hard things is thriving. The brain, the human brain, was built on survival mechanism. It is the limbic brain back here. This is the one that kicks in. It's trying to get you to go back to the old habits. If you think about it, we have been doing the standard American diet, or whatever diet we were on before, for decades longer than we've been doing this. So how many years do you think it's going to take for those habits to finally switch over? Another lifetime. And with that knowledge and understanding, you can give yourself a lot more grace and not do the berating. Because guess what? We practiced that a lot longer than we've been practicing this. We just haven't mastered it yet. So let's get into the thoughts and some practical tips for moving forward. First thing I always encourage everyone to do is start to become a detective of your thoughts. Do not let a thought go by unchecked. Make an intention for 24 hours, because when we have something like insular like that, we're more likely to do it. And pick a day, any day, and just say, okay, for 24 hours or for as long as I'm awake, I am going to try to catch every thought that I have today. You're not going to catch them all. There's a million of them going all the time. But make the intention of intentionally thinking about what you're thinking. What this is going to do is two things. Number one, you're going to realize that you are not your mind. You are the one observing your mind. If you can hear your thoughts, then that's not you. You're listening. So now you can separate yourself from the thoughts. This is a really big thing talked about in some of my favorite books about overcoming disordered eating. And let's make no mistakes. This is disordered eating. It's not just full-blown bulimia and anorexia. This relationship with food issue is a disorder. It is disordered. And all a disorder is something out of order. Okay? It's not a medical thing that we can't overcome. I think that's a huge piece too, is that we tend to identify with our disorders, or we identify with our medical diagnosis. But what's the one thing that this community has done a lot of? Defy the odds. Do what everybody says can't be done. You can't reverse type 2 diabetes, right? Let's stop identifying with those things. Even that concept of I am a food addict has a double-edged sword. It can really help some people to see it that way and say, it has to be yes or no. And it has to be a no because it can't be a yes because I can't do a little bit because I'm an addict. If that helps you, great, use that. But for others, it keeps them stuck. And I'll get into that a little bit in a minute. All right, so first you have to do kind of like what you would do if you were about to confront a spouse or a child about something difficult. You don't want to go in guns a-blazing as soon as your spouse walks in from work. Not the best time. You got to think, is this a good time to have this conversation? When am I going to bring this up? You want to bring it up when the emotions are not already high, right? So when you want to start observing your thoughts, you're not going to be able to do it in the moment of trigger. So get it out of your head that you're going to immediately be able to do that. That ain't going to happen. So pick a very neutral day, not a day where stress is going to be through the roof, but just a typical day that might be a little predictable. And then set the intention, maybe even put a little alarm on your, oops, I never ended my workout. I guess I've been walking for an hour and a half. Anyways, alarms are good to have. Set a little alarm for once an hour, and then you'll forget, because you'll forget to observe your thoughts throughout the day. But this will be your little reminder. Oh, check in with your thoughts. What are the thoughts I've had recently? The more you do that in times where you're not trying to identify thoughts about food, you'll be better at identifying the thoughts about food when the opportunity presents itself. So just practice this one. And there's a great book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. He became a monk and then like opened a school and all kinds of things. So he talks about this observing the mind, observing the thoughts. That's the thing that really solidified that practice for me. So you want to try to capture all the statements you can, just in general, day to day. What are you saying to yourself? Capture that internal chatter. And then you can transition that into, first of all, you're probably going to notice some of the ways that you talk not so nicely to yourself. So that's powerful in and of itself, to just to start becoming aware. Really important to do when you commit to doing this is to not judge those thoughts. Because what's going to be, you're going to notice your judgy thoughts about yourself, and then you're going to judge yourself for having the thoughts that are judgy. And that's not helpful. So you're starting out with the intention of whatever I'm saying to myself, there's no judgment about it. I'm going to become aware so that I can start to shift it. Okay. Then it translates into food. So when you're about to eat that off-plan food, what is going through your mind in that very moment? I will tell you, most people will never do this, and that's why they'll never stop having the behaviors. They don't want to do it. There's usually I'm not thinking anything, I'm just thinking I want it. I had that myself. Really had to work hard to figure out what were the actual thoughts. Because I always thought, well, I was just thinking I wanted it, and I ate it. So the next step is to pause. Create a pause there when you have an urge to eat something that you know you don't want to eat. I notice I did not say you shouldn't eat, because that's still part of that old paradigm of thinking. Oh, I'm not eating this right now. Let me pause. Why am I going for it? This is going to be hard to do when it's already a habit. So what I like to do with clients is we do a post-mortem after a binge. I do not let them get off the hook. They don't get to just say, I binged, it's not going to happen again, I'm just moving on. They're like, I'm not guilty, I don't feel guilty, I'm just moving on. I'm like, I'm glad you don't feel guilty. Now let's analyze what happened. Because if you had a failed event, let's say you're an event planner, you wouldn't just say, well, that crashed and burned, oh well, let's move on. You would say, what went wrong? So I can fix it and make the event better next time. So you sit down and do a post-mortem. Last time you ate a thing. This is a great thing everybody can do tonight. What's the last thing you ate that you're not proud of? The last thing you ate that sent you off track? And ask yourself, what was happening around me? Put yourself back in that place. What was happening around me? Yeah. Juliana, that's so funny. She said good old after action reports Bronson knows about. Bronson and I had a discussion about the title, and he said it's after action. It's not post-mortem because it's not dead.
Bronson, it's not after action either because it's not a military function, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, boo. Yep. So okay, so we go back and we analyze, what was I doing? Who was I around? What was going on? The next thing is, what were the emotions? What was I feeling? Was I anxious? Was I bored? Was I tired? Was I stressed? Did I have pressure around a deadline? That's what it always was for me. Luckily, I had carnivore snacks in the house yesterday when I was working on a deadline. So I may have overeaten, but I did it with carnivore snacks chicken. So I just went over on my protein. But I digressed. It was still a habit that I don't want to be a regular habit. So, and that's a really key indicator too. We can be doing this, we can make all the food swaps we want. But if we don't address the behaviors, the habits, and the thoughts that are attached to it, it doesn't matter how many food swaps we make, our life is not going to change in the long run. You'll get a lot of great benefits at the beginning. If you're eating meat instead of the junk you were binging on before. But binging is still binging. And even if you're not going to the extent of binging, turning to food for emotions is not the answer. And that's not a healthy habit you want to have in your life. So that's why I love Dr. Sivas, who talks about this so powerfully. He doesn't pull any punches either. All right. Yes, Grace, all diets fail without addressing the food addiction. And I would go one step further to say, once again, because I mentioned that addiction earlier, that I don't even like calling it food addiction, because I think that that's disempowering. I like to say it's my habits, it's my behaviors. I'm taking full ownership for it. And I'm also taking the liberation of the ownership of the responsibility that if I am the one doing it, then I am the one who can change it. And that feels powerful to me. I don't want to give that away and say the substance has any control over me, because it doesn't. And that is another, I meant to mention this book earlier when I mentioned some of the disordered eating books. Brain Over Binge. That was the first one for me. And that was the first one for so many who struggle with opening up the idea in their mind that there is this limbic brain that's kicking in, this emotional brain, this survival brain that's kicking in. And we need to get back into the prefrontal cortex, because we are human beings, and that's what separates us from the animals. We have this prefrontal cortex that helps us think logically. So when we're in these emotional places, shifting from the emotion to the logic is where we need to go, because from the emotional place, we're not likely to make a good decision. So this is what the pause does. When we start to build in this pause before we eat the thing, and we ask ourselves, why am I going to this thing? What do I really need right now? You may need rest. You may need to take a nap. You may need a hug. I love to say cuddles over cupcakes, because oxytocin does for us. Oxytocin is the drug we get from human connection, human touch. Oxytocin does for us so much more than carbs do in the serotonin department. They always they always say, oh, carbs help with your serotonin and your dopamine. BS. Get a hug instead. It'll do a million more. So much better. So build in that pause, but we build in the pause by doing the postmortem first. And learning to, just like children do when they do something wrong, they learn there's going to be consequences. If we keep sweeping it under the rug and saying, I'll do better next time, that's not a plan. That's a goal, that's a wish, that's a dream, that's maybe an intention, but it's not a plan. So it can't stop at the I'll do better next time. How will you do better next time? And this is where, with the postmortem, you can identify, well, what was going on? What were the emotions I was feeling? Why was I turning to food? What did I really need? So now that I know what I really need, next time, how can I set it up so that I go to that thing instead of the food? Maybe I need to invest in having something nearby in my vicinity that I can turn to instead. That's not food. Maybe I need to call a friend. So create your action plan for what you're going to do next time. Ooh, Maria, right on. It's like the words you wrote are like echoing the words I'm saying. Circumstance creates a thought, then a feeling that results in an action leading to the result. If you want to change the result, you can intervene anywhere in the preceding steps and most commonly change your thoughts. Exactly. Y'all know, look, I used to have this thing that I would do when I was in the height of my bulimia. And I would go walk through a grocery store because I always went to the grocery store to buy binge foods. And when I was desperate to stop the behavior, I looked at, and I always talk about low-hanging fruit, right? Sometimes it's too hard to go to the extreme and say, I'm going to be perfect in the other extreme. Every day I woke up with the intention not to purge, not to binge, to have the perfect day with eating. And that didn't work out so well. So instead, I started saying, well, okay, I'll let myself go to the grocery store, but I am going to look at each thing that I'm thinking about buying and binging on, and I'm going to make myself pause. I'm going to read the label. I'm going to look at what's in it. I am going to look at the carb count and the calorie count. I'm going to think about what this is going to do to my body. And you have no idea how many times I walked through. I could spend an hour or more in that grocery store as part of my process to interrupt the pattern. If that urge still took me to the grocery store, at least I can pause and think about what I'm going to do. Sometimes I still binged. Sometimes I left the store with nothing. So find where you can interrupt the pattern in that process. There's lots and lots of steps there, but only if you become aware of it. We have to become conscious of it first. Okay, so once you start becoming really aware of the behavior and even more so the thoughts, this is where you want to identify those self-sabotaging thoughts. And I say write them all down. And do it until you find the one that was the tipping point that time. That one that eventually convinces you to break and go eat the thing. And this is also, by the way, can be a sign that you're still thinking about this from a diet mentality. Because if you can be convinced to go off and do something else, you may still have this thought that I'm doing this as a diet, as a short-term fix. And that's another thing to address. But start writing down all those thoughts. And then once again, when you are not in the heightened emotion state, the next day, that night, whenever, pull out those thoughts and start writing your rebuttals for each one. Prepare like you are a lawyer about to go argue this case. What was the thought that came up to try to convince you to eat it? Oh, it's just one. That's always one that everybody shares with me. It's just one, it won't hurt. That's probably that's definitely the number one that I hear. Right, one time won't kill me. Exactly. So my favorite rebuttal to that one is, and this is how you find all the rebuttals. This is all from Glenn Livingston, so I got to give him credit. How you find the rebuttals is you find the lie. So you start asking questions. Your brain has to answer you when you ask questions. So you start asking, well, wait a minute, is that really true? Is it really only going to be just one? Is it really not going to be that bad? What happened last time I did it? Did it lead to another? Find the accuracy. Find the lie and find the accuracy. And now you have a rebuttal. No, it's not that. Yes, it is that bad. And this is why, because I have evidence. This is what happened last time, and I don't want that to happen again. Ooh, I love this, Juliana. She said, you had a friend that would text you, are you sure you want the pain in your joints tomorrow? That is awesome. Have you thought this through? Oh my gosh, I love it. That's amazing if you can have an accountability partner like that. I'm not gonna lie. I get a little defensive when Bronson reminds me, you sure you want to have that cheese? You know what dairy does to you. Oh, shut up and go over there. And I'm like, he's right. Okay, and then finally, I touched on this, but the diet mentality. Stop making keto the means to the end. We want it to be the end in and of itself. And that does start with connecting it to all those good things we were talking about, all those things you want. Learning to associate it with those things instead of this being this big bad policeman who's coming and taking you away from your abusive spouse, the junk food. This big bad police officer, he's the bad guy because he's taking me away. No, he's saving you. Keto is saving your life. And so many people can say that definitively it has saved their life. So maybe we switch the goal from the outcome that we're looking for and the goal be the lifestyle itself. Okay, now this last one may be kind of tough for some people. This is not going to be for everyone. Like I said, eat the fish, spit out the bones if it's not for you. But sometimes you are not doing the brand of keto low carb that is right for you. And this is not usually like at the beginning when you're first trying to make a change. At the beginning when you're first trying to make a change, it's hard. We talked about that, how hard that is, because you're changing pretty much everything, right? But even then, you can start with baby steps. And so I think this will apply to you as well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But here's a hint. If you can't stick to it, it's not going to work for you. So if you're forcing yourself to do something you hate, maybe you need to take a step back and just find the one thing you can change first. This lifestyle for me started with giving up dairy, which, let's be real, that's not even a keto thing, right? That keto didn't exist before at that point. I don't even know if Atkins was around yet, but it was just dairy. And then that led to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And it was like noticing more things. And then eventually finding myself in carnivore. But it was not, oh, I need to go carnivore because everybody's going carnivore now. That's the only way. I need to do a sardine fast. That's the only thing that's going to work because that's the thing everybody's talking about now. I need to fast and I'm starving after 4 hours, but these 24-hour fasts are the way to go. I talked about this the other day. If you guys don't follow, Rena from the 5 Minute Body had me on her challenge group the other day as a guest speaker. And that was a powerful thing we talked about was this lifestyle is extreme. We are fringe. We are still fringe. We are still the cool kids, right? We're like this big in the grand scheme of the world. We're getting bigger, but we're not the big kids yet. And why would you want to take this thing that is already extreme and already countercultural and go to the extremes of the extreme? It's setting yourself up to fail. I've had clients who come to me who have not gotten off the standard American diet and they want to do carnivore. Why? If you have a severe illness and you're trying to do it, you need to do it for that, or you think that that's, even then, I would probably say there's some steps we can take before we get there that are going to give you some major relief. Let's get rid of the cupcakes before we go carnivore. How about that? Right? This is the 1% that Bronson's always talking about. I remember early on, I used to eat chips and dip after work every day while I got ready, while I made my dinner. The chips were the first thing to go, and I replaced it with raw veggies. I don't eat raw veggies now, but I didn't need to take them out then. Low hanging fruit. I was paleo for 5 years before I was keto. And I was keto for another 5 or 6 years before I was carnivore. So you don't have to do it all overnight. And you don't have to do it because somebody else is doing it, or because it's the popular thing to do, or because some doctor said to do it. We always have to consider our own context. All right. So evaluate, is this working for me? Meaning, do I feel better? Is my health or my weight or any of the metrics that I'm looking at to determine my success, are those things moving in the right direction? And hopefully you have a lot more than one metric. If you haven't established any, establish your metrics and then start to track to see if you're making improvements. For so many of you, that means all kinds of symptoms. And the beauty of this lifestyle is that you actually discover a lot of them along the way that you didn't even know. I love it when clients are like, I wasn't even thinking that this would impact my sleep quality or my, oh my gosh, all the keto babies, right? From the fertility. There's just so many things that we discover along the way that improve. So are you getting improvements? Do you enjoy your food? I always like to say, don't eat anything you hate. And if this is brand new for you, there's a lot of foods out there. Find a few that you can handle and get excited about. This is why, as much as I don't promote BBB&E, beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, it works for so many people because otherwise they wouldn't be able to do this. So that's where I have to commend Dr. Berry for that, because introducing people to this lifestyle with something they can handle, something that they enjoy, is the way to start. Even if it's only one food and that's all you enjoy eating. If you got to live on bacon at the beginning, cool. Deb, I'll take kittens over bacon any day. I want one so badly. By the end of the year, y'all, Bronson keeps making little hints, and I told him I'd be happy if you would just surprise me one day. Anytime is cool. Okay, do you get bored of eating what you're eating? Are you sick of eating? Are you looking for something else because your meals are not enjoyable? Then it's time to shake it up. I just gave the speech in my shred the other day to keep it simple. When we're doing things like tracking macros, we really need to keep it simple because all the complex stuff is just going to be exhausting and overwhelming. But after you've nailed it and you figure out what you're doing and you've got your basics covered and you're bored and you're like, first of all, food is not entertainment, but I am a big proponent that we should enjoy our food. I don't think that food is just fuel. Food is a lot more than fuel, and we get to acknowledge that. We don't have to sit here and say, oh no, food is just calories and it's just there to, no, we get to enjoy it. So enjoy it. So if you're not enjoying your food anymore, now is the time to go to find those recipes or get in the group and ask people for ideas. Because nowadays we have so much we can do that didn't exist 10 years ago in this community. So there's a lot more options, so many great recipes out there. You never have to eat something you don't enjoy. Keep yourself excited about it that way. Now, if you're one of those people who really would love to eat some fruit, or God, you really miss your Brussels sprouts, but you're trying to do this carnivore thing. And you don't have a real reason why that you need to be on an elimination diet like that. This is where you may want to reevaluate and step back and say, why am I eliminating all these foods? Is it just because I need to hit keto macros? And I think that that's going to be the answer. And so I can never have any fruit. I've shared with a couple clients recently that I have had a blueberry protein bowl every single day for the last few months. And I am happy as a camper. I'm a happy camper, happy as a clam. That's the right euphemism. And I was surprised one day when I noticed I went to the grocery store, and I usually walk past whenever I'm in Walmart, because it's the only place I can find it, the Lind 100% dark chocolate bar, no sugar. I think it has maybe 1 carb. That's the chocolate bar I will buy when I'm wanting chocolate. But it fascinated me that I had zero interest in buying a chocolate bar. And Trader Joe's used to have one that I like. They don't carry it anymore, but I went to Trader Joe's recently. Didn't even think about it. And then when I was there and I was like, oh, I don't even want to buy a chocolate bar right now. And I think that is because I've had my blueberry bowl, and that is satisfying the need for something that's not meat. And that's okay, because that works for me. I don't need to be off blueberries for any particular reason. So we have to start looking at things in our own context. If I was allergic to blueberries, would I be eating them? Absolutely not. And as much as I love peanut butter and peanut butter protein powders, I don't buy those because peanuts are very inflammatory, and very inflammatory to me in terms of like, I notice it. Same thing with dairy. As much as I love it, I would be doing cottage cheese everything these days with everybody else on TikTok, but it does not love me back. So Juliana says, what is a blueberry protein bowl? I'm going to drop that in the shred, and maybe I'll drop it in the Facebook group as well. It is super freaking simple. It's literally protein powder with a little bit of liquid, just so that it becomes like a little pudding kind of consistency. And I do the Equip beef isolate protein is my top protein. But I think I dropped all of them in the group. All of my protein recommendations. But yeah, I just do that. Sometimes I'll do a vanilla, sometimes I'll do a chocolate, depending on what I'm in the mood for. I've been all about the vanilla lately. And then I just put frozen wild blueberries. I keep a big bag of frozen wild blueberries in my freezer at all times. They're my favorite. I don't like regular blueberries for some reason, but I love the wild blueberries. I've always liked really bitter fruits, and they're like teeny and bitter, and they're so yummy. And they freeze the protein pudding. So it's like this little frozen, it's like a vanilla blueberry protein ice cream kind of a deal, but it's not blended like a ice cream, but it is so yummy. And I just eat it just like that out of the bowl. And that has satisfied any need for a little bit of more variety. I've also added in some other things like pickles. I've been obsessed with pickles lately. I do a large variety of meats. So my version of ketovore, carnivore is not like one meat. I love everything. I do lamb and salmon, and lately I've bought turkey, and I really was off turkey for a long time, just didn't enjoy it. But lately I've been really enjoying the turkey. So I like to switch it up. Of course, beef, different cuts of steak. That's the kind of person I am. No, I do not put all this in the protein bowl. Protein blueberry poke bowl. Yeah, no. Ew. But Bronson loves him some ground beef and eggs, and he will eat just ground beef and eggs every single day, sometimes with some butter, and that's perfectly fine for him. So we're all individuals, but there's no need to keto harder or go carnivore because everybody else is doing it. And then what that tends to do is it fuels the all or nothing mentality. And I did a whole masterclass on the all or nothing mentality. I was going to get into it a little bit tonight, but so many of you, especially in this space, right? Because of the whole abstainer and moderator conversation. Most people, and I was one of these too, come to keto because I can't have a little bit. I will go crazy. So the fact that I am sitting here in front of you telling you I can eat a sweet vanilla blueberry protein bowl every day, and it does not cause me to do anything more than that, I hope can give you hope that you do not have to be a abstainer for the rest of your life. But it is not easy. It ain't an easy thing to change. I'm going to give you some quick tips on how you can change the thinking around this all or nothing. And then definitely check out the other, I'll bump the other masterclass so it'll come up to the top in the group about the all or nothing thinking. But essentially what it is, it's a fixed mindset. This is how I am. This is the only way it can ever be. It can't change. I mean, we now even have science that can prove that we can change our neurons. We can change the firings in our brain. We can change these connections, and we can change so much more than we ever thought we could. So this identifying as that I am all or nothing, and that's always the way I hear it said, I am all or nothing. That is you affirming that that is who you are and that it cannot change. So the first thing you have to do is stop saying it. Another thing that may tell you that you are a all or nothing person is if I say that you can allow some things that you thought you couldn't allow, expand your variety, allow yourself some fruits and veggies, maybe if you're trying to go carnivore, or if you're keto and you've only been doing X number of carbs and you think somehow going over your carbs by 2 grams now makes you not in ketosis and now you've ruined everything, you may be an all or nothing thinker. You may be letting this black and white thinking throw you off course. Yep, these are my peeps who are like, if I eat one piece of lettuce, now everything's ruined and I might as well go eat the cake. We know that's completely illogical. We know that doesn't make any sense at all. But there's this concept of, I always like to say, restriction is in the mind. It has very little to do with what you're actually eating and not eating. And it has everything to do with how you feel about what you're eating and not eating. Those shoulds I talked about, that's probably playing in the back of your brain. If you were to pick something that's not quote unquote keto. By the way, there's no such thing as keto foods. Ketosis is a nutritional state. And even people eating high carb standard American diets can go into ketosis and out of it if they just don't eat for long enough. So this is it a keto food or not? Like eliminating that from your mind. And also another thing, my friends at Keto Gains like to say, and I worked with them for a long time, it's not keto that's creating the fat loss. You can not be in ketosis and you can still get fat loss. So that we don't need to be chasing the ketones. That's not the magic. Ketones can be magic for a lot of great things, especially a lot of cognitive things, but they are not magic for fat loss. They certainly can help with insulin resistance for sure, but it's the whole spectrum of the process. It's not either having the ketones present or not that's making the difference. You can do a lot of it, just like I always say with fasting, you can get a lot of the benefits that people get from fasting just by eating less, just by reducing your calorie consumption. You can do the same thing for fat loss without needing to be in ketosis. So that, when you can kind of allow your mind to let go of these absolutes, it's a process. But Okay, the other thing is a lot of the time, and I did this myself, I would hear somebody say, well, you have to practice allowance and you have to stop being so restrictive so that you can let go of that restrictive, you can let go of the obsession with food. Whenever I used to hear that and I was still in my eating disorder, I thought, well, they want me to eat junk. They want me to eat garbage. They want me to eat cookies and cake and all this other crap. That is part of the black and white thinking. By saying you can practice allowance, nobody's telling you that you have to eat a bunch of garbage. That all things in moderation means you have to eat donuts and you have to eat candy. Nobody's saying that. And in reality, I love to pull the curtain back and say, you know, my colleagues in the fitness industry who are high carb eaters, guess what carbs they're not eating? The same junk carbs you're not eating. They're eating plain rice, plain potatoes. What else? What's the other big one? Oats. Plain oats with egg whites. That doesn't sound appealing to me. And those were not the carbs I had a hard time giving up. But they are not living on junk food either. Being fit is going to require, being healthy and being fit is going to require a sacrifice of some sort. It's the trade-offs that we talked about earlier. Okay, so take a step back and think about foods on a spectrum. You know, really, is that strawberry going to make you fat? Maybe if you eat 10 pounds of strawberries in a day, but it's going to take a lot of that to get you up over that energy threshold and where you're putting more food in your body than what you really need. And that, my friends, is really what causes the fat gain. Even on a high carb diet, even with insulin resistance, if you ate very, very little, I mean, it would not be comfortable and it would not be enjoyable, but if you ate very, very little, you still could lose weight. It's the too much fuel. Carbs usually come along with fats, especially in all those hyper palatable foods. And now we're getting all this calories up here. It's more than what we need. And that's when we store it. Okay. So reevaluate, maybe allow yourself a little more variety than you thought and see, and that's not going to do it all in itself. You also still need to do the mental work because you have to catch those thoughts that may be still telling you, oh, you shouldn't be eating this. I know you're practicing allowance, but you shouldn't be eating it. And that's the thing that's going to drive it, not the food. It's the thoughts about the food. So continue to check those thoughts. And then the other big thing for people who are really struggling with letting go of that diet mentality is to stop dieting for a while. And I don't mean stop keto or stop your way of life, your way of eating. I mean, stop trying to actively lose weight. And when I say a little while, I mean like 6 months to a year. Take some time off of that journey. Most never take that much time off. This was incredibly eye-opening to me after this last year of working with a coach as a pro athlete for a full off season. This is the first time I've ever done that. And I spent 7 months at maintenance, actively not trying to lose body fat. And I can tell you the freedom in my mind is insane, the night and day difference. I don't ever even have any urges anymore. It's all gone. It feels like magic. I don't even have to try anymore. The mental stuff, it's not a struggle. It's just not there. And that came from dieting and dieting and dieting and dieting. And even when I was in an off season, when I didn't have a coach, thinking I should be dieting and I need to maintain a certain level of body fat. But this can also be you if you have a lot to lose, because a lot of the time it's like, but I have so much fat to lose. Sometimes we got to let go of the fight for a little bit. That doesn't mean you eat a bunch of garbage for 6 months. It just means to stop the efforting and the focus on the fat loss. Okay. All right, finally, I think I have one more thing to share. Yes, once you're past the point of trigger foods sending you in a tailspin, this is when you maybe, and this is where you really have to be honest with yourself about where you're at. Because with disordered eating recovery, the first thing they do is put you on a structured eating plan. And you don't have the triggers around you. So if you're the person, I've also heard this a lot. If you're the person who says, well, I want to be able to be a moderator. So I tried it and I failed. And then the next week they check in. Well, I really wanted to try moderating. So I bought this thing and then I ended up eating the whole thing. And then the next week. Okay, so my goal is to be a moderator. So I'm going to try just having one cookie. Oh, I ate the whole package. All right, if all you see around you is evidence that this is not working for you, now is not the time to try to moderate. You need to take the triggers out. And what I love to say, okay, I have a challenge that I give people if they're really struggling. Remove anything sweet from your palate of any kind, natural or unnatural, for 4 days. Your mouth does not taste anything sweet for 4 days. It's not magic. You still have the mental component, you still have the habit component, but the physiological desire for that thing will massively reduce. So take the triggers out. And then when you get to a point where you're on the other side of the coin, where you're just restricting and taking this food out and taking that food out, and maybe you're going down these rabbit holes, but maybe it's not necessary for you, you might be in a position where you want to do something like what I did. Pull back from carnivore a little bit, put some other things back in, feel that freedom. But I'll tell you what I did before I did that, before I started putting in the blueberries and the pickles and all the other stuff, I did the lion diet. So I actually did my own challenge. I took the sweet stuff out. I took the protein powders out. I took out my beloved nut pods that I put in my coffee in the morning. All the things that are sweet, keeping that sweet tooth alive. And even took out all the variety of meats and just ate beef the first week. And then beef and lamb for 2 weeks. And then when I just went back regular carnivore from lion, I felt like I had all the options in the world. It was like, look at all these different meats and seafood and eggs, and bringing eggs back in and all of that felt so freeing. So this is what I mean when I say the restriction is not in the foods we're eating or not eating. The restriction is how we feel and how we think about the foods we're eating and we're not eating. So I hope that this masterclass, this went on and on, my goodness, but I get on a rant with these things because this is my biggest passion. I hope you have lots and lots to take away from this. Some exercises, some journaling, some identifying of the thoughts. I even mentioned some books. Go out there and decide what is going to be the next step for you. Try something. And then drop in the group, drop in the Facebook group and let us know how it goes. I'm so glad y'all were here with me. Shout out to Mary, Juliana, Maria, Christina, Shannon, I think was also on the whole time. Like you guys really rocked with me all night. I love you so much. And yes, I do have a book list. I think I posted it in the group, but I'll check and either I'll bump it or I'll repost it. All right, loves. Until next time, have a great week. Go crush it.
Have a good night.